Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Supervisor George Hoehmann from the town of Clarkstown. Let me just introduce the folks that are here. There'll be several that'll be speaking as well. So we have our entire town board here. We have Councilman Don Franchino, Councilman Mike Graziano, Councilman Mark Woods, and Councilman Patrick Carroll. We also have our Highway Superintendent Bob Milone. In addition, we have a representative from Congressman Lawler's office, his Chief of Staff, Rafi Silverberg, who will be speaking last. After me, you'll hear from New York State Assemblyman Ken Zebrowski, who's been a real advocate, along with another true advocate on this problem down here, New York State Senator Bill Weber, who will be speaking after Assemblyman Zebrowski. So allow me just to offer a few opening remarks and comments. Route 59 is an incredibly important state roadway, and I emphasize that it's a state roadway. Within the town of Clarkstown, within any town or municipality, there are a variety of roads. There's state roads, there's county roads, and there are town roads. Now, within the town of Clarkstown, I'm proud to say that during my administration, we have over 300 miles worth of town roads, and we've done a great job of really expediting repairs and upgrades on those roads. In fact, we've gone from a 20 plus year paving plan to roughly a 10-year paving plan. So our roads are in relatively good shape. And when we pave a road, we also address all the drainage. So a lot of the drainage issues that we've been finding in some of our local neighborhoods, we've been able to fix. In addition to that, we've been able to do some other work along the Hackensack River within the last number of years, and I'll get to that momentarily. But the town has done what it can as it relates to flooding and drainage in the West Nyack area and across the town in general. And what's frustrating here is that Route 59 is a state roadway. As town supervisor, as highway superintendent, as a town board, we don't have any authority over this road. We'll provide policing. We'll often, because of instances, our police will be the ones that will end up staffing the roadblocks. When the road gets shut down, it becomes an overtime issue sometimes for us. But that's about it. You know, in terms of our relationship with the roadway, it's entirely up to New York State. New York State realizes this. It's through the New York State DOT, and what they fail to understand is, you know, we know it here well. There's 45,000 vehicles that go up and down Route 59 every day. 45,000 vehicles. Route 303 has approximately 25,000 vehicles that utilize that roadway every day. And it's completely unacceptable to have this road shut 8 times in the last year. We've had it shut about 16 times in the last 3 years. Enough is enough. There needs to be a comprehensive plan. The town of Clarkstown, on our own initiative, undertook a major drainage project. It took years to be able to complete, but I'm thankful through former Congressman Milone that we were able to secure $5 million. And just a little north of here, we undertook the Klein Avenue Levee project along the Hackensack River. And a neighborhood that historically floods didn't flood, hasn't flooded since we completed that project several years ago. Yet Route 59 right nearby has flooded and been closed 8 times in the past year. It's unacceptable. We as a town made a decision to try and address a historic flooding issue, and we were successful. A little further up the Hackensack River, we have the Jeffrey Court neighborhood, and that historically floods as well. And the town is well along the way on a plan, and I want to thank Congressman Lawler, who's been able to secure through the House of Representatives, and we're anxiously awaiting the passage through the Senate and signing by the President later this year, of $3.5 million to assist the town in constructing a project upstream that will protect Jeffrey Court. But the town doesn't have any authority here on Route 59. And there are 2 problems here. The first problem is that the Hackensack River floods and overflows, and it impacts this area. It impacts the Palisade Center Mall. It impacts businesses like Dunkin' Donuts that ends up having to shut down every time that this roadway closes. So we need a comprehensive plan for the Hackensack River. That's above the capacity of the town supervisor and local officials. That requires state and federal assistance. And I'm delighted that we've got strong partners in Congressman Lawler, Assemblyman Zebrowski, and Senator Weber, who are going to assist us in trying to bring this forward and force the state of New York to once and for all develop a plan in concert with the federal government to address the Hackensack River and the historic flooding here. It's unacceptable that this major east-west artery through our town is closed this many times. There's untold impacts on the residents and the businesses. There's health and safety concerns. This is the major artery. This is how ambulances and police and emergency services get from point A to point B between our two hospitals. And to have it shut down and then the impact and the burden that places on the other local roads, it's absolutely unacceptable. There's no plan here by the state. Nobody's addressing this. We've got some suggestions. We believe that that there needs to be a dredging of the Hackensack River. There needs to be some flood mitigation projects that will allow for additional overbank storage of water so it won't negatively impact the local area. Frankly, we also believe that there needs to be a review of the interstate compact with the water as it relates to Lake DeForest supplying northern New Jersey. This is a historic problem, and it's something that needs to take place. In addition to that, there's some other complicating factors. We have some obstructions within the river, namely the CSX Railroad Bridge, which is over 100 years old, around that embankment. So we firmly believe that there's efforts that need to take place that are going to have to involve the Army Corps of Engineers, and it's going to have to involve the state of New York on the Hackensack River as it impacts here. Another complicating factor is that drainage off of the Interstate Thruway dumps down off the mountain onto Route 303. The culverts on Route 303 are undersized, and the culverts then come and they make a 90-degree angle right across from Bobby Lane, and also on the other side of the underpass, the overpass on Route 303, and then come along this area and connect it to the Hackensack River. Well, it's counterintuitive to most folks when you think about it, but when you really take a look at it, when you have a 90-degree angle, there are blockages. We know that these culverts need to be fixed. The state knows that these culverts need to be fixed. And businesses all along Route 303 are suffering, and Route 303 also ends up closing. Bobby Lane ends up closing. We have water rescues with the West Nyack Fire Department that take place virtually every storm because people drive into Bobby Lane because it floods so quickly. The state knows that these culverts are undersized. We've had conversations with the DOT. They know what the problems are. And the solution isn't simply to hear nice accolades from the local workers, and they're great with the state and the local workers with the DOT. We've got some good working relationships with them. But their simple solution is to say, well, we'll address the catch basins, we'll clean the culverts, we'll clean the catch basins before a big storm. They were great here in terms of making sure they had plenty of barricades to shut the road down. That's not what we need. We need a plan, and enough is enough. People's lives are at risk. Businesses are suffering, and we have to address this. And I'm delighted that we've got strong partners with Assemblyman Zebrowski, Congressman Lawler, and Senator Weber, who will help us address this. As I said, there are a lot of possibilities. Our town engineers have taken a look at this. Route 303's culverts need to be addressed. That's one issue. But really, we need a comprehensive plan for the Hackensack River, which can include dredging, which is going to have to require additional overbank storage. And frankly, I think it's time for us to look at the interstate compact with how water is supplied to northern New Jersey. Because it's not just Clarkstown that is experiencing flooding along the Hackensack River corridor. Several years ago, I was invited down as the town supervisor to a meeting with our water supplier. At the time it was Suez, now Veolia. And all the elected officials of northern New Jersey, along with Rockland County, were invited down who were impacted by the watershed. And I was shocked to listen to all the stories. I thought it was just us up here in Clarkstown and in Orangetown who were facing flooding because of the Hackensack River. But there's other issues down in northern New Jersey, and I think it's time that the federal government, in concert with New York and New Jersey, come up with a comprehensive plan for the entire Hackensack River water basin. It supplies water to northern New Jersey, and again, there are agreements with this that date back to the 1950s. Should agreements in the 1950s dictate how we proceed in 2024? I don't think so. I think it needs to be addressed, and that's something that we're looking forward to also have put on the table. So 3 things we're asking. the state to take seriously and come up with a plan for right here on Route 59 and Route 303. Number one, to fix the culverts on Route 303, to come up with a capital plan on that. Number two, to make sure that they come up with a plan as it relates to the Hackensack River. And number three, to look at this overall from a larger level as the entire Hackensack River watershed and with all the implications that has for New York and New Jersey. So I'm going to now pass it over to New York State Assemblyman Ken Zebrowski, who's been a really strong advocate and assisted us and has been trying to push the DOT to move forward with a plan here. Assemblyman Zebrowski.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor, and thank you for the close working relationship we've had with your administration and your town board and everybody in the town of Clarkstown. You know, this road we're standing on right now, I think, was built in the 1800s. It was the Nyack Turnpike. And in a lot of ways, these flooding issues are a century in the making. You can go back into some of the library archives and see articles talking about flooding from then to the modern day. But one thing is for sure, this problem has gotten worse and worse. And obviously, we've seen wetter and wetter rain events, more stronger and stronger storms, and we've also seen more and more development. And each project intersects with each other and exacerbates things in a lot of ways. But as the supervisor said, this is a state roadway, so the state has to quarterback the process of fixing this problem. Some of it may not be in the state's purview, but they still need to quarterback the projects, bring people to the table, and figure out what can be done in a holistic way to help stop this roadway from flooding, which affects the businesses, affects our first responders, the mall, one of our biggest retail establishments, the biggest retail establishment here in Rockland County, all the homes that are along this area, people trying to get to the thruway. It's going to take a coordinated effort. When you talk to the state, I think they did a project, it's got to be about 20 years ago now, where they raised the roadway, I think, about 18 inches. And obviously, that hasn't worked. They did it 18 inches because of the flyover that's right behind us. I don't think they could go any further because you have trucks that are coming along this corridor that needed that height distance. As the supervisor said, they'll come through and clean catch basins and stuff like this. But we have gone through a couple rain events a year, maybe a couple every other year, to now, as the supervisor said, 8. We know that every major rain event, and not even major rain events, this roadway is going to be closed, which is completely unacceptable. There are a lot of things. That's why I'm glad we have folks from the town, from the federal government, from the state government, Senator Weber and myself here, that are dedicated to getting to the table and bringing everybody necessary in order to solve this. The dredging of the Hackensack River, which may be one of the key components to a solution, will need to be done by the Army Corps of Engineers. So we have Congressman Lawler's office here because we're going to need to get them to the table. They don't like to dredge, but this is completely unacceptable. So we need to find a solution here. The supervisor mentioned the CSX rail bridge. That's owned by CSX. We've already sent some communication over to Senator Schumer's office. CSX is not an easy agency to get to work with. And that's a 100-year-old train trestle. But if that is part of the problem, we need to find a solution. They're going to have to rebuild that train trestle, which is going to take an enormous amount of lifting from all of us here and our other federal partners. The culverts on 303, other drainage issues that are underground and in the area. All these things are going to have to be brought to bear. The water company, Veolia, certain things that they can do. Their tariff, the Public Service Commission that oversees that tariff, they're going to have to be at the table. Each one of these things need to be worked together. So while the state does what it can in terms of making sure that the culverts are clean and that the roadways, when they do projects, raising the roadway, that's what is directly within their purview. That's just not enough, but it is their roadway. We need somebody to quarterback this project, and we need everybody from all levels of government, including the water company, private companies like CSX. We all have to come to the table and understand that this cannot continue. It has been decades and decades. And while one or two were unacceptable to the businesses and the residents a year, one or two a year or every couple of years it was unacceptable, it is now every single rainstorm, and we have to find a solution. So I want to thank the supervisor, the town board, everybody's here. I know the highway superintendents here and our federal and state partners. We're all committed to getting this solved. So thank you. And I think I'll turn it over to my colleague, Senator Bill Weber.
Thank you, Assemblyman. You know, I think Assemblyman Zebrowski said it best. This is not a new problem. This is a problem that we've seen going back at least 100 years, and to have this continue in 2024 is unacceptable. You know, it's not only a safety issue. Obviously, we have this being a main east-west artery between the two major hospitals, Nyack Hospital just being right up the road. We have the West Nyack substation, fire department substation right here, and we have a quality of life issue. You know, the residents and the local businesses continue to suffer. And you know, the state DOT, you know, we've been in contact with them over the last couple of days and with prior storms, and right now they have no plan to fix this. So it's unacceptable. We really need to have not a Band-Aid fix. We don't need a Band-Aid fix. We need a long-term solution, and it's going to be a solution that I think Supervisor Hoehmann mentioned it. It's going to take a multi-pronged, multi-agency approach, a collaboration between federal, state, local officials, having the state DOT quarterback it, but we're going to need federal funding. We're going to need state funding. We're going to need a collaboration among all agencies to make sure that this is done and it's done right. So the time for words, I think, has long passed. The time for action is really needed at this point. It's a quality of life issue. It's a safety issue. And frankly, it's something that should have been done a long time ago. We have the opportunity to really, I think, address it now, and we really need to look at this thing holistically. So I want to thank my partners in government, and they know and I know that we will work together to make sure that this becomes a reality and that we're not here another 16 times over the next 3 years, or 7 or 8 times in this last year. You know, we turn on the news, we hear about a storm coming. We all know where the storm is going to be most impacted, whether it's here, whether it's the Thruway, Jeffrey Court, or some of these surrounding areas. So we really need to have a commitment on federal, state, local authorities to really work together to get this done. So I want to thank Supervisor Hoehmann, the town board, and all my fellow partners in government for standing here today to really talk about the outrage and talk about the solutions that are needed. So thank you very much, and Supervisor Hoehmann, thanks for being here.
So thank you, Senator Weber. And our final speaker, and before he speaks, I just want to make one point. Just during this press conference, you saw the paramedics go by, and it emphasizes that this is the corridor. This is how our emergency vehicles get back and forth. Our police, our paramedics. You heard the senator reference the West Nyack substation. That's also used by Rockland paramedics, the paramedic services for Rockland County and for the town of Clarkstown, where they stage their vehicles there in between calls. That floods routinely as part of this issue with the Hackensack River. Nyack Water, which provides water for the village of Nyack, for central Nyack, and for portions of West Nyack, that also becomes impacted by the flooding here along the Hackensack River. So there's a lot that's at play here. But our final speaker, before we get to him, I just wanted to thank Congressman Lawler. His chief of staff, Rafi Silverberg, is here. I went to Congressman Lawler last year after we had looked at. We've been looking at a fix for Jeffrey Court, which is about a mile upriver, and that neighborhood historically floods. And we've been able to navigate the process through the House of Representatives, and Congressman Lawler has been able to secure, and the House has already voted and approved, and we believe it's part of the comprehensive budget packages and bills that will be passed through the Senate and eventually signed by the President, that will provide $3.5 million worth of funding for us to undertake a project on Jeffrey Court, which it's going to take, we're going to have to get through the permitting process, but eventually there'll be a fix for Jeffrey Court. And the point is, I want to thank the Congressman's office for it and the Congressman himself for championing this, but it just can't be the town of Clarkstown looking at one-offs, getting federal aid to be able to do Klein Avenue to Jeffrey Court. We need a comprehensive fix. But I do want to thank Congressman Lawler. I'm going to turn it over to his chief of staff, Rafi Silverberg, for some remarks from the Congressman.
Thank you. On behalf of the Congressman, thank you, Supervisor Hoehmann, for arranging this to address the constant flooding here on Route 59, which is a major concern that obviously requires immediate attention. Throughout the appropriations process, Congressman Lawler made it a top priority to secure funding for important public health priorities, there's the flood prevention project, including the one that the supervisor mentioned on Jeffrey Court, which already passed the House and is waiting to be passed in the Senate, be signed by the President. As the other electeds have mentioned here, we will be working with everyone to a comprehensive long-term plan. We will be working with the Army Corps of Engineers regarding dredging the Hackensack River, reaching out to MTA to start looking into this. And hopefully sooner than later, this won't be an issue and this road shouldn't be closed every time there's a storm of rain. Thank you, everyone.
So with that, we're happy to take any questions. Yes, Steve.
Supervisor, let's go back a couple of years. The law was being considered part of the deal for about $2 million to solve the problem. Was that ever done? What was the outcome?
So as part of the mall's approval, there was work that was done along the Hackensack River, and if you look along the ShopRite property, you'll see that there was a project that was undertaken many years ago where it created overbank storage for water. So what that basically is, you cut back the bank and you make a shelf so that the water can then fill in that area. It allows for more volume and more capacity along the riverbank. So that was done, and there were a number of hydraulic studies that were done at the time. And if you recall, it used to flood up before ShopRite. So that portion seems to have addressed the flooding that was taking place at ShopRite. That no longer happens based upon what was done in that portion of the river. I think the bigger issues that we're seeing, frankly, are there's been a lot of silting into the river. The Army Corps of Engineers does not like to dredge. We firmly believe, I can tell you as a kid growing up in West Nyack, that off of that train trestle, the water down there used to be 10, 12, 15 feet deep. You can literally walk across, and not have the water go above your knees during the normal times of the year. So there's obviously been a lot of silting in that's taken place along the river, and we believe that a dredging of the river makes a lot of sense. But in addition to that, because of development, not just here, in this area, but upstream, with all the runoff that's taking place, when you build in Ramapo, when you build up in Haverstraw, that's going to have an impact on this watershed, the Hackensack River watershed. That's why I'm calling for a comprehensive look at the watershed, because it's the entire watershed. It's not just here. If we do something here, it can impact downstream. We saw that clearly with the Klein Avenue project. With Klein Avenue, as we raised our levy, one of the things we were required to do, and what we were asked to do, and we were required to do it in order to do the project, was to replace the bridge downstream. Why was that needed? We had to raise the bridge to provide more capacity for water to get through on Western Highway. So this has to be looked at comprehensively, and it's not, and that's the whole point. And the state has no plans. Their plans are essentially through the DOT. They'll provide staff to clean the culverts locally, and I was here just before the roadway was being shut down, along with our emergency operations officer Milone, as the state was about to close the roadway. It was great. They had barricades and they had folks here for it. We don't need that. We need a plan, and we need a plan very quickly, because we can't continue to have this. It's not in anybody's interest. It's not in the interest of the residents. It's absolutely against every tenet of public safety. The major east-west artery through Clarkstown, and for ambulances and firefighters not to be able to get through here, it's just completely unacceptable. And it's the state that's responsible for this. It's their road. They've got to come up with a plan.
Do you have any timetable? Obviously, you're saying the state has no plan. So what is the state? Whether it's going to take for you to get the state moving, if you can.
So I'll turn it to both of them very quickly, but I can tell you we've had some conversations, and I'm hopeful that based on the work of Bill and Ken, that there'll be some meetings very quickly as it relates to this. Ken?
Yes, I've had, Senator and I have had conversations with DOT already. They already have engineers that are coming up with a plan, or at least attempting to identify all the sources. And then from that, study, we're going to bring everybody necessary to the table. Like I said earlier, I think it's going to be the water company. I think it's going to be the federal government. I think it's going to be the state. We're going to be talking about culverts, Route 303, the Hackensack River, the train trestle. All those things I think are going to be part of it. But like I said earlier, using the word quarterback, somebody has to quarterback it. It's their roadway. This is just unacceptable. And, before this storm, so we had gotten that feedback from them, and before this most recent storm, we called up again to say, it's going to flood. Send some engineers down right now during this rain event, and they said they were doing that. So we hope to have at least a framework rather quickly. Now, the work is yet to be seen, how long and how much. Off the top of my head, getting CSX to build a new train trestle is going to be an enormous lift, assuming that is part of it. But we need a solution. This is a major state highway, and we can't just throw our hands on it, especially when this is happening. It's going to be a dozen or so times by the end of this year.
Right. Thank you, Assemblyman. And the only thing I would add to that is obviously we've seen a lot of the roads, not only Route 59, but Route 303, and a lot of the other state roads in this area really need major TLC, need major infrastructure investment. So, it's going to be a fight. Once we have this plan in place, it's going to cost a lot of money. And that's why we're going to need help from the federal government to really, I think, really carry most of the load, the financial load, because what I've seen in my short time in office is that the state DOT, always says they're underfunded, they don't have enough money to do it. So, getting the plan in place is extremely important. We need to have that plan now, but we're also going to need to make sure that that plan becomes reality, and it's really going to only become reality when we have partners in federal government to really fund this.
So for the immediate future, this problem is going to stay with us.
Well, of course. I mean, let's be honest. The government moves, but it moves slowly. But it does move. And I think, like Ken said, we're going to have, hopefully, engineers come in here, do a short-term and a long-term assessment of this area. And then I think at that point, the battle will become, how do we pay for it? So, government moves, but it moves slowly.
That leads into my questions. I was wondering if some of the officials could shed some light on the steps that may need to happen and may need to take place. Just a framework, if anything, of what you believe it takes on the state level or larger than that.
So obviously it's the state starting, and as through the efforts of Assemblyman Zebrowski and Senator Weber, that they've already been able to get engineers and people from the DOT, and through our office we've had some conversations with the DOT. So they're now actually starting to look at what can be done in the short term. And I'm hopeful that's going to involve, work on the Hackensack River is going to require permits, federal government, and some studies there. The good news is that the town of Clarkstown, through the Pine Avenue Levee Project, has already studied that portion of the river. We already have engineer reports and data that's pretty new that we can offer to the state. We also have work that we're doing for the Jeffrey Court project, which also is an update of some of that, which is further up the river. So it's, there's some efforts there, but it's going to require the state initially to come up with some short-term plans, and then to identify money to do some quick fixes. I think the culverts on 303 is probably a quicker fix than the Hackensack River. And if that were to happen, with some engineering plans and capitalized, maybe within the next 12 to 18 months that could be addressed, I'm guessing. And that would hopefully end the flooding on Route 303 and the flooding and the closure of Bobby Lane. Because when you come down to this area, and I come down every storm, and just to give you some context for those that don't normally cover this area, the water this time was above the guardrail. So, literally, you can imagine how dangerous that is. It's up to my waist, basically, where we're standing right now in this area. And, but it basically would flood all the way kind of back up, past Dunkin' Donuts, and then would stop. And then you'd have flooding on Bobby Lane, which is the access road to Route 303, and then flooding now down on the other side of the overpass, and that's where the culverts come across. So what does it tell you? The culverts are undersized. The culverts on Route 303 are undersized, so it's flooding that area. That's a separate problem. The state can fix that fairly quickly, They already know what their drainage is. They already know that their drainage is undersized. They already know that the New York State Thruway has water that's dumping down onto Route 303. So they have to involve the Thruway Authority in fixing the water on the Thruway, and they've got to come up with a plan to fix the culverts, and that'll fix that problem over there. It's not going to address this problem here, but it's going to fix Route 303. That gets 25,000 cars a day. So that's one fix. I think that could be fixed fairly quickly. I think this is a longer-term solution because it's probably going to involve dredging of the Hackensack River and creation of additional overbank storage upriver and downriver as well.
Gotcha. I want to ask one more thing. We're all tracking a couple more storms in the next week. What do you guys want to say as we all prepare for that?
As town supervisor, I want to emphasize to everybody, please, not just here, anybody that's listening anywhere, don't think that your car is a boat and try and drive through these waterways. I can tell you every storm we have water rescues by the fire departments, whether it's by the West Nile Fire Department here by Bob Milone, or whether it's by the Nanuet South Spring Valley Fire District up in Nanuet and Perlman Drive. It just happened this past storm. We had 2 vehicles, pulling in on Perlman Drive and flooded. So wherever you are and you're listening to this, whatever municipality you're in, if you're going to an area that's flooded, the roadway's covered with water, turn around, take another way, because what's going to happen is you're going to get your vehicle flooded, and you're going to get stuck, and then you're going to put somebody at risk to come get you. Our police officers are going to have to wade through knee-deep or waist-deep water to pull you out because you thought you could get through, and your car's going to be ruined. So turn around, find another way, or cancel whatever thing you were going to. That's number one. Number two, we're going to tell the residents to just be prepared for every storm. And unfortunately here, we know that this weekend, if the forecasts hold, 2 inches of rain is more than likely, given the groundwater, is more than likely going to cause at least a partial or a full closure of this roadway. And finally, I want to tell the residents, we're working on this, but it's not us. And thankfully for our federal and state partners and their assistance, we're going to push the state once and for all to address this issue. When I became supervisor in 2016, I had a number of folks in 2016 that were saying, West Nyack always floods, what are you going to do, what are you going to do, what are you going to do? Well, the town is investing between federal and state grants and our town's own funding over $30 million in West Nyack in revitalization and flood remediation projects. We completed the Klein Avenue Levee project. We did the park revitalization, which included water retention and storage behind the park. And we're going to be undertaking later this year likely a $10 million project to completely redo the street in downtown West Nyack. And that's also going to include flood remediation. We did the Klein Avenue project, and we're working on the Jeffrey Park. What we can't do